Dear agency leaders, AI is not the holy grail you think it is. It won't fix your current problems. It won't create massive new opportunities. It won't save your agency. Unless you change your relationship with the people who actually do the work day to day. They're the holy grail. And they're the ones who can help you take advantage of AI or any other tool that comes along promising advertising nirvana. Today's guest on the DesuckifyWork Podcast, Mark Redgrave, has created a framework for agencies to get the most out of their teams by embracing all that each individual brings to the table. Their skills, hobbies, loves, passions, and potential. Their whole selves in the best sense of those words. We barely scratch the surface on this in most agencies. So much goodness locked away that could be solving the massive problems we face. We need to rethink how we work. We need to embrace a mindset that goes beyond creative to think creatively about the most challenging business problems. We need to tap into the unique genius of every person to maximize the greatness the entire agency is capable of. And we need to provide autonomy and accountability, allowing small teams to collaborate and own the work, free from micromanaging. Mark and I dig into all of this and more during our conversation. I came away with a lot of hope for this industry. I hope you do too. Okay, Mark Redgrave, welcome to the DesuckifyWork Podcast.
Hey, TJ. Great to be here, man. Thanks for inviting me.
I am glad to have you here. I'm excited to talk to you. I know you've got a lot to say that this audience will appreciate and I think needs to hear. But before we dive into all the dirty details, why don't we give people a chance to know who you are, what you do for work, and how you came to be doing it?
Yeah, so English guy, been in Orange County for exactly a year now. So arrived 12 months ago. Okay. Before that, spent best part of 8 years in Australia and New Zealand. In Biggs, actually started as CMO over there, but sort of moved into different transformation roles. Before that was in San Francisco for 5 years, 2010 to 2015. Before that, London, born in the UK.
Nice.
So, and I guess, early career, like studied design and technology at university, went into advertising business, worked for one of the best agencies in London for a number of years. That's how I started my career.
Oh, nice.
And I've just lived, I guess something that's really formed me, I've lived in lots of places, right? So London, went to Sweden, from Sweden back to London, London, San Francisco, Auckland, LA. So that forms a little bit about how I see things, I guess.
Yeah, I can imagine that. And I wonder, as you play through that journey, one of the things obviously we talk about here is how people can desuckify work. And that can be kind of at a global, like company, organization, industry level, and then it can be individual. Was part of your journey as you were kind of making your way through to kind of find work in a situation that really like resonated for you?
I guess I would say the last 8 years, 100%. So much so that I've made it my career now. And we're going to get into that, right? So that'll be cool. But I guess before that, what do we all do, right? I guess we all sort of get into a career, hopefully. And I remember in the advertising agencies, in London, super fun, like just impossible to not have a great time. Honestly, TJ, I didn't sit there and go, oh, I wonder how empowering this team is. It's like I was 22 years old, living in London, having the best time of my life. So absolutely. I think we all sort of in the early stages of our career, what we do is we experience work, right? Very few of us, I think, sit and think like, is this working for me? And I guess the big circuit breaker there, right? And for you and I, that was later in our career, but COVID was the big circuit breaker.
Yeah.
That's the thing that sent us all home and made us go, hold on a minute, like, is this shit what I want actually? So I guess, but the last few years of my career, I've been like only thinking about like how teams work, how companies deliver performance, how you get large groups of people vaguely moving north. So
That's a great point about, when you're young, you don't always think about it. I think that's changing a bit, probably because a lot of young people have been through a lot of crap, including COVID. And so their expectations are elevated about how they spend their time. I also think like what can happen is you fall into a career, you're having fun, and then it's almost just like you wake up 20 years later and you're just sort of struck with the reality of what you're doing. And I feel like, I know for me, I coach people a lot of times like that, where they're like, yeah, it was fun, it was cool. And then all of a sudden now I'm doing this thing and I don't know if I like doing it anymore, or if I don't know how to do it in a way that I like and that I feel good about. And I feel like that's kind of what you're starting to tap into. It's like the better companies can be at creating environments where people can feel empowered and feel like they're listened to, and their voice matters, and the work they do is actually pointing towards something worth anything. The better off people are going to feel about their career when they wake up at 40 and wonder, what am I doing? But I think a lot of us have those moments.
What's driving this, TJ, right, is like, these companies are searching for performance, right? Like that's the long and the short of it. And it's like, whether you're a private business, like most private businesses I work with and I meet, they want to do something. Like there are a few where it's like, you know what, we're all good. We're just ticking over here. I'm retiring in 10 years. I'm all good. Yeah. But most of them want to do something. They've got ambition. They want to grow. And if you're a public company, it's like the pressure on shareholder returns it ain't going away. I always struggled with that, by the way, when I was, when I was an employee at a large public company. Yeah. The tension between like shareholder returns and like you had these companies, it's like they've got customer experience at the center of their proposition, but shareholder returns trumps all, which always I found a really interesting dichotomy, right? It's like, hold on, the right thing to do for the customer is to reduce our prices by a buck. Yeah? And everyone's saying, yeah, well, I know we're a customer inspired business, but like, no, that ain't happening. So you kind of go, so I'm a bit off tangent here, but I guess the thing is, all these companies, what they want to do is they want to improve performance, right? So to do that, you've got to have people, doing great work, inspired, engaged, and want to contribute, right? They want to do more. Yeah. So this is why I think like it's so fundamentally important to the conversation these companies are having, because when you talk about growth with a lot of these companies, people think sales, top line, like how do we sell more? And my position on that is always like, hold on, look inside the business. So what's like, are your people, you've got 50, 100, 1,000, 10,000. It's like, are those people, do they love what they do? Seriously. And you don't expect them to maybe truly love it. Like if you had a choice, you and me, right? I don't know about you. I talk for myself. If I win the lottery, I don't go to work again. Right? Let's just be clear. Like that does not happen. Right. But it's like for most of them, you say, how can we make this better for you so you feel more fulfilled, more energized, more committed? Because that's going to deliver the results these companies need. So that to me is the connecting piece here, right? And I think people the last 5 years, I've seen people wake up to that, right? Like in a way they haven't before. So that's really interesting for me.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I feel like we're talking about that more. Like people are saying, happier people, more fulfilled people, they're going to do better work for you. That's going to squeeze more performance out of your teams and your company. And yet we're stuck. People are still, the data says, people are unhappy. Like maybe a third of people feel very satisfied with the work they do. I mean, if I knew these numbers, I'm running a company and I go, only a third of my people are probably pretty satisfied or more at the job. And I also know, I've seen enough data to know that having more engaged people, happier people, more fulfilled people creates better results for me. I would be like, well, then let's fix that first part. So why aren't they fixing that first part?
Yeah, so awesome question, right? And I think so there's a couple of dynamics that I see playing out. The first is you got to be really careful about playing the metrics game. So I'll give you an example. Yeah, I see some companies and they run like ENPS, Employer Net Promoter Score within the company, right? So normally HR, they're responsible for the ENPS number. Okay. Like if there's no like, the monthly executive meeting or the board meeting, it's like, what's the NPS number? It's like, oh, we're up 2 points, we're down 2 points. It's like, okay, good, box checked. Like, okay,
yeah,
right?
got it.
It's like this is a barrier because at an executive level, people think we're all over this right now. And the reality is, with all these things, like, you've got to do something. So when you sit on an employee net promoter score that's like, maybe it's gone up 7 points, okay,
Right.
but you look at the verbatims and you start to understand what's happening with the way people are feeling, like at a detailed level.
Yeah.
You start to see, okay, this is quite interesting, right? For example, the thing we see all the time is our teams are quite dissatisfied with, for example, like changing priorities.
Okay.
Right? It's like, okay, right. That's a real common thing, right?
Sure.
So what you got to do to get your arms around that is you have to help your business and your people understand, like, how to have a growth mindset around change. Was two things actually. Number one, you got to sharpen up your priorities and stop changing shit just for the sake of changing it. That's one half.
Yeah.
Okay, that's for leaders. But for people, you've got to help them understand that change is part of what we now do. It's part of business today.
Yeah.
So the key is, your question is like, why is no one taking this seriously? It's like, you've got to get it below like a number, a metric that someone's measuring with the organization, and move it into like actionable stuff you're going to do to change the way your people feel about the work they do. But it's quite complicated. So I'm not sat here going, this shit's easy, why hasn't everyone done it? But I am sat here going, like, we know what to do. If you understand where the opportunities are, improving those things is very doable. Okay.
Right.
But you've got to commit to it. And the good news is the prize is great. And I'm talking like, you get this stuff working for companies of any size.
Yeah.
And the way the company feels and performs changes really quickly.
So if companies are sort of paying lip service, right? Okay, I got my net performer score. It's fine, even going up a little bit. I checked that box. And yet over here, they're having meetings either with shareholders or just the top level execs about performance. And they're going, it's like we're treading water at best.
Yeah.
And the headwinds are strong. And, we've got technology changes and all that. And then what you're offering is something transformative, right? You're talking about transformation, which I think, I'm trying to wrap my head around this a little bit. I think transformation is one of those words that a lot of people nod their heads at. And they go, yeah, of course, we need to transform. We need to do things better. But I think when they say we, I think they tend to mean everyone else. Everyone else around me needs to change, so I can just keep doing the shit I always do.
Yeah, my shit's good, man. My shit's fine.
And
it's
so
him.
the guy down they don't hear it, and then I also think there's this secondary component of like, if I have the choice between treading water and doing something that could have me completely sink, which is what transformation feels like to a lot of people, I think I'm just going to tread water because I'm terrified of sinking, even if the upside is really high. So when you talk to companies about the idea of transformation, the idea of making the people relationship much stronger, much better, and pointing towards these great results, do they come at you and go, yeah, but what if it doesn't work and then we just completely fall apart or something like that? Do you get that kind of resistance?
Yeah. So first thing, I don't talk about transformation.
Okay.
So like, well, actually not true. So part of my work is I'm aligned to one of the world's biggest consulting companies. I do work for, some of the biggest brands on the planet. That's transformation work with a capital T.
Yeah.
I'm a subject matter expert, part of a very large team doing transformations with many digits.
Yeah.
Right. So now transformation over there is fine. Yeah. There's what triggers that is always like a often pseudo existential crisis. Okay. So these companies are like looking and going, if we don't do something really significant in 10 years, it could be game over.
Yeah.
Right. So now that's a very unique conversation, right? It takes incredible courage for an executive team to lean into that. It really does.
Yeah.
Very fun work. It's super interesting. I personally love seeing big teams, like 5,000, 10,000 people, like change the way they work. It's wicked. I
sure.
absolutely love it, right?
Yeah.
It's not very common. Now, when I'm talking to mid-cap, smaller businesses, and this can be anything from 30, 40 people to a couple of hundred people to a couple of thousand people, right?
Yeah.
Like the focus is always on ways of working, like team effectiveness, and creating like this concept of high performing teams, right? So I think that's less threatening language, and it seemed, and the concepts are kind of self-explanatory, right? But still, we need to understand and we need to empathize with these clients where change is always scary, always scary.
Yeah.
Right? And I think the key to that is just to understand that, and this is the narrative that I think is gaining a lot of momentum, but it's like, change is here, guys. Like seriously, like you can't, I just can't really appreciate or vibe with anyone who doesn't have that fundamental acknowledgement, right? Like everything is changing. Yeah. And I don't really care what business you're in. I don't care what industry you're in. Like everything's changing and you don't know what's coming. You have no way of knowing what's coming. Right. And if you think you do, you're wrong. Right. So let's just agree that, right? Yeah. So when people start to go, yeah, it's true. Like who would have known that, like we'd have like a ship like run aground in the Suez Canal, and now my supply chain's completely messed up again. Right. Yep. Shit happens, man. Right. So here we go. So when you if that's the start of the conversation, then you start to say, right, how do you make your business, okay, like able to embrace that change so that you use it to fuel you, and you use it as a point of advantage and benefit, not as a showstopper. And when you get to that, and then when executives go, okay, how do I do that? Now you're having a real conversation, because you say, right, the key to that, you got to get your team, you got to empower your teams more. You've got to change the way you do decision making. Because guess what? When the ship runs aground in the Suez Canal, right? If Bob is the only person in your company that can make that knows what to do next, you got a problem, because Bob's on a golf course, right? So that's kind of how this stacks up for me. But it's the start point is for people, leaders, people who own these businesses to go, okay, it's changing. We don't know what's going to happen. What shape, size, what capabilities does my company need so we can thrive through that?
It's interesting as you say that, I start thinking about, you mentioned, you started in advertising and I spent 25 plus years in that world. And change is an interesting topic in advertising, because on one level, like, it's shouted from the top of the mountaintops, particularly directed at agency clients. You need to change, you need to do new things, you need to do breakthrough work. And then when you look inward, I think a lot of agencies may pay the lip service. We're hip to the brand new thing. We're always like on top of trends, blah, blah, blah. But when you talk to like the fundamental ways of working within an ad agency, 98% of them look pretty much like they looked 30 years ago. And yet here they are staring down, real change, not just like, oh, we're now doing banner ads instead of print ads. Like real change. Like obviously AI is the big thing, but then like you said, there's the 30 other things that we don't even know about yet. But that's the world we're in. So that kind of a client shows up and says, okay, I hear you, Mark. I get it, but I don't even know what that looks like, because 30 years ago, I had copywriters, art directors, account directors, some strategy people and a media team. And 30 years later, that's what I've got. What in the world, what does different even look like? How do you start that conversation?
So this is a topic quite close to my heart, because because of how I formed my early part of my career. And I look at this, TJ, exactly as you just explained it. I look at it and I don't get it. Right. Like I look at agencies and look, there's been a massive focus on roll-ups and M&A and like scale, right?
Yeah.
But it's like these guys are staring down the barrel of a very big gun right now. And what I don't understand is why they are so change resistant. And you know what? I'm using this is like a collective noun, they.
Yeah.
It's like it's grossly unfair.
Yeah.
There are probably some agencies that are doing an awesome job at it. But I kind of think that this is my thought process. It's like, right, like in the last 5 or 6 years, the most forward-thinking companies on the planet have made giant strides in understanding how to engage, inspire, and empower teams to do work, right? And that the way that by changing their ways of working, their culture around these things, it's like they put double-digit growth on multi-billion-dollar EBITDA lines. Right. So we're talking like significant growth on companies that are massive. So I'm like, right, that's like, there's learning there. There's insight there. They're showing that like there is value created if you empower. And then I look at agencies and I look at what is a 30-year-old operating model where there are 4 people in the building who think they own the place. Often they actually do own the place because they're
sometimes
partners.
They're partners.
But it's like, and what all I see is this, a building full of really amazing people with great talent. Okay, that are probably delivering 30% of the value they can bring because they're kind of subdued by the way the agency operates. So like, to me, this is about a creative culture versus a business culture. And what the question I'd ask you is, how long can agencies continue propagating this creative culture when like they need to have a business culture to survive what's about to happen? I'm telling you that's true. Right. Like I have a very strong feeling that like the next couple of years is going to see, this is going to be very traumatic. So I would say, right. So what do you think about that? I'm going to ask you that question.
I'm intrigued by it.
Why isn't there more business culture in that industry?
It's really interesting because, my initial instinct was to resist that a little bit because I think creativity is really important. But I also think, having worked in advertising for very, very long, there is an almost aversion or a pride in it not being like other businesses and not being businessy. And that's part of the draw for a lot of us. It's like, I could go work for some consultancy or something, and that sounds boring and drab, and I'm wearing the suit every day, or I could go work in a fun, creative place. And what I wonder is like, how do you take the best of the creative culture? And I don't mean just creative like we're good at producing ads, but I just mean like creative mindset. How do you take that and marry it with like a deep awareness of business challenges, business problems, business opportunities, and so that when those show up at your door, you're not saying either, I don't know how to do that, I can't do that work, or I think I know how to do it, and then you fumble it because nobody really knows how to do it. Or, you don't even realize it's an opportunity, because you're so wired to the model of what we do is we take a creative brief from the client, and then we execute against that and we deliver you a campaign. I think there's a ton of opportunity to embrace the business mindset. What I don't want to lose is that there's something special in agencies around thinking differently. And how do you marry those two?
Yeah, and by the way, I agree, right? So as someone, I mean, I remember having conversations actually when I was in San Francisco with some big clients. So this is like 2014 maybe. And there was a really hot conversation around like, okay, the internal agency. Right.
Yeah.
And that's kind of one of the first instances, because some of the big tech companies were really starting to build momentum, right? And they were poaching some very good creative directors. And I remember thinking, like, having conversations, and it's like, I still believe this, like, apart from the very biggest brands who can get anyone they want.
Right.
Because they can offer them incredible riches, right? So much so that and an incredible working environment and an incredible challenge and incredible, but for everyone else, the best ideas are going to be in the agencies. Like, so if you are a business, a brand, and you want the brightest minds, the best creativity, the highest quality thinking, it's going to be in the agencies for exactly the reason you just said. Yeah. That, like, culturally, it's where those minds want to work. So I'm agreeing with you.
Yeah.
Now, the challenge is that's like a golden goose, right? Agencies are going to lay the eggs. I believe that will continue to be true.
Yeah.
Now, the challenge is, like, if you like, when you think about, like, value to be preserved. So if you say, right, current agency model, there's value to be preserved, but there's also a ton of shit that needs to change.
Absolutely.
So the way to do this is to in a really, at a really detailed level, think about, like, exactly what it is that needs to change, right? I'll give you one example. Like, when we're talking about changing businesses and changing to high-performing teams and really getting people connected to delivering value, not just work, because work doesn't create value, right?
Agreed. Yep.
We do this thing where we move from outputs to outcomes, right? So we try and encourage people and teams to think about what's the outcome we are trying to achieve here, not what's the work product. Okay. If you start to think in those terms, so for example, an outcome might be, let's say I worked as CMO for a telco for a number of years, right? An outcome might be we need to reduce churn in our SME segment by 1%, right? Okay. Now, there's a number of outputs that may or may not be useful for doing that. The key to unlocking value in your teams is to get them clear on the outcome, reduce churn by 1%, let them figure out the outputs. Now, a lot of agencies, this is my conjecture, are very output focused. And do you remember, this goes back 20 years ago, the joke used to be like, we're an ad agency, it's an ad. Now, what's the question? Right? Do you remember that joke?
Yeah.
Like what are you going to do? What are we going to do? We need to do something new. Yeah, it's going to be an ad, but we can talk about what type of ad.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So now let's flick that forward. And then, of course, integrated agencies became a thing because they're like, it's not just ads, everyone. And, and I actually, in London, I worked for HHCL, which was the number one integrated agency in London and probably one of the first integrated agencies on the planet. So, but now, so flip that over and say, right, so if we're going to how do you become as an agency outcome focused? Right. To do that, you've got to understand your client's business. This is no longer, right, a conversation about, like, we need to create an ad unit that does this. That's not the conversation. Okay. And to be in that business conversation requires your teams, not just the account director or the creative director, but your teams to understand the business problem. Okay. The question for you, do you think teams in agencies today acutely understand the business problem?
No. I mean, on occasion, like, sometimes if you've spent enough time on an account, you start to at least get a little bit of that. But I will say, in my experience, nobody really fully understands. I mean, I think you might have, like, the top planner in an agency who's got the ear of the CMO or somebody, and that you start to hear some of that. But so little of that trickles down. By the time it shows up to us, it's like, it's a brief, and maybe buried in there somewhere is some nugget of, like, sales are down or whatever, churn is high. But what's big in front and center is we need you to create, 10 banner ads, 2 radio ads, 1 TV ad, and a social campaign. And so it is very output driven. Absolutely. And I think what's crazy is, at least from my experience, a lot of creatives, and I think this is true of account and others as well, crave, like, I want to know what problem I'm really solving, because I actually think not only does that help me help you, my ideas are going to be more interesting. If
Exactly.
I know that the problem I'm solving is reducing churn or whatever it is, my brain goes to a billion different places than if it just says, we need, 3 Facebook ads. And there are some places doing it. Mischief and a couple of other agencies out there right now, I feel like are like attacking the business problems. They've got clients who come in eager and are kind of just basically bearing it all and saying, please help us. But I think most agencies aren't set up that way. I think, this is a tough question, but there's sort of a media infrastructure that drives a lot of these conversations, right? It's like, I remember as creatives, like sometimes we'd come up with some off the wall idea and it was maybe loosely tied to some business objective that we thought of. And it's like, oh, we don't know how to fit that through the system. Because the media is driving you to say, well, these are the places we need to put the things we make. So,
but if you always do what you've always done, you always get what you always got, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. Now that is, from my perspective, and again, I'm coming at this from, I know the business. I haven't been in it for a while, but I know the business a bit, and I've looked at the other side of what high-performing organizations look like. So I'm going, okay, this is what they're doing, and then I look down the street and I go, wow, like feels like an opportunity. And what you just said triggered something in my mind, right? But first of all, clients have to help here. So like, whilst clients are initiating briefs that are output driven, that's not going to help. Okay. So like there's a mutual education process that needs to happen here. But the thing that aligns you is business performance. Right. So like these clients are trying to achieve something. The fact that they don't think in outcome terms, or maybe don't, like, well, that's a shared opportunity, right? So that's a good thing to think about. Sure. And the second thing is, and this actually touches on your previous point about but hold on, the golden goose, right? This is something that I've experienced myself, and it's so bloody powerful, right? When you think about teams achieving great things, right? It takes a village, right? And in organizations, okay, there is so much thinking and quality in human capital that sits in the whole team. So stop thinking, and this is a rallying cry for everyone, stop thinking that your highest paid person is the smartest person and the only person who can add value. Right? So let's just make that real in agency terms. Okay. Your executive creative director, brilliant, right? But they are operating off a foundation of information and inspiration, okay, that comes from somewhere.
Sure.
Right. My challenge would be, and this is what I do with organizations, okay, is unlock the collective intelligence of everyone in that team. And we do amazing work, right? Where because I believe in creating cross-functional teams. I believe in creating not a holacracy, but very flat structures in my teams. So I will always be advising clients to, someone's got to be accountable. That doesn't go away. They're like, can you put 10 people around a table and they're equals? And you know what? You've got Anna, who's an intern, and you've got Jane, who's been there for 15 years, and you've got you've got Bill, who's the highest paid guy in the room, paid 4 times more than Anna. But you know what? You're all just there. Right. Now, here's the problem. Okay. Like, listen to each other, like embrace that perspective, like create a diversity of thought you've never had before. Open your mind and listen. Now, what happens is you have this amazing conversation, right? And like, if you think of that in agency terms, imagine if you unlocked the contribution from everyone around the client.
Right.
And then like your ECD, right? They're not sat there. You haven't disempowered them.
Right.
What you've done is you've actually, like, if done correctly, you've fueled them with perspective. You've now got 15 people that have made a meaningful contribution to the business problem. And your ECD is going, oh, dude, I never thought of that. I've got a very good idea, because that is what I'm brilliant at.
Yeah.
But the ideas come from a different. So do you understand what I mean? Like, I think this is where the opportunity is.
I do. I like what you're saying. There's a couple things in there that I think are opportunities for agencies to rethink, right? When you talked about how the ECD might hear all these ideas, my first thought was the word discernment showed up, and there's like, kind of subject matter experts. And so if you have everybody coming together as equals in a meeting, you go to that accountability. Who's accountable for discerning which of those ideas? Maybe that's the ECD. Who's accountable for discerning something else? So giving people the ability to use their skills of discernment to figure out how they can then take that information and use it based on their experience. I also think, like, when I picture this world, I think that's like stage one, but then there's all this structural stuff around it. Meaning, if I put 10 people in a room and they come up with a bunch of ideas, how do I knock down the things like the fact that the media has been paid for 6 months in advance, and some of these other challenges where great ideas, and then everybody's trying to funnel it through the fact that we have like 3 pages with Condé Nast, and we've got like a 2-month buy with Hulu. How do you help companies see that while that can still obviously be a piece of what you offer, and that's, again, somebody could discern and go, oh, let me pull that here. How do you empower the teams to then be able to actually make the things that they're coming up with and pull the structural barriers down?
I'll tell you what you don't do, right? Is you don't flip this thing inside out, upside down, gut the place. And no, don't do that.
Yeah, agreed.
Okay? But if you say, right, our challenge, so maybe the logic is this, right? Like, all businesses are facing, like, significant increase in the pace of change. In the advertising and marketing industry, like, you have a number of things coming at you.
Yeah.
Most of them AI-based that are absolutely existential, 100% existential, right?
Yeah.
So how do we unlock the capability of a wider team, towards facing that challenge? It's because it's going to require new thinking. It's going to require new perspectives. It's going to require, so start now. Right? And I think if you broke it up, TJ, you could probably say, right, there's a creative process. There's a thing to do with, like, operations. There's a thing to do with like account management. There's a thing. I mean, I remember, right? Like, as an account director, like, every single interaction and idea that ever went to the client was through me.
Right.
This is a while ago, but it's like, and I'm like, I would have been so much better if I'd have had my account team, like, making a intellectual contribution to solving the problems we're trying to solve, because it was all me. It was, and so I sort of feel that there's ways to unlock some of this human potential. Like, and that's where you start. But you don't, and then you set out a roadmap, right? Where you say, and then you bring your client along that journey, because clearly, whilst you are making 6-month in advance buys on media and stuff, it's like your ability to adapt and flex is quite limited. So you don't. I wouldn't advise anyone flip it over and hope for the best.
I don't think that's probably, most places aren't willing to do that. I think maybe if you built something up from scratch, you might make it look differently, but you got these companies that are, they've got a lot of procedures that will take a little bit of time to adapt, and maybe some of them ultimately get unwound as they do. But as you started talking about tapping into the resources that are in the building, I started thinking this is a really interesting challenge for leaders. And I don't even mean like the top leaders, although it's for them too. But I mean all the way down to the frontline manager. So like, an account soup, an ACD, getting the skills needed to recognize the talents in their people, right? Because if I'm an ACD, the talents I know from the copywriters and art directors who are funneling work through me, I know they're good at creating ads. I know occasionally maybe they have an out-of-the-box thought that's slightly not an ad. And I know very little else. I mean, maybe the more I get to know them, I have a sense. But it's interesting. This reminds me of a previous episode. There was this guy, his name's Patrick Riley, and he runs a company called Radical, which is all about having people build their career story. And part of that, I think, is in an effort to do what you're talking about, where instead of just being a resume and a face, there's some way of pulling out the different interests and skills that we all have within us, so that when opportunity X shows up and it's like, we need people to kind of toss around this idea and we need to pull that 10-person group together. It's like, oh, talk to Jane.
Yeah.
This is what we know about Jane. Yeah. She's fascinated by AI. She listens to 20 AI podcasts. Like that kind of stuff is like, it only shows up by chance because like so-and-so shows up on a Monday morning and goes, oh my God, I listened to this crazy podcast. But if we could operationalize the deeper understanding of what our teams are interested in, good at, interested in getting good at, like, do you have any thoughts on that, or have you ever done work like that to help companies get better at that?
Yep. So I think it's a brilliant insight, right? Mm-hmm. And a couple of things that bring that to life. So when you, if we go into organizations, right, and we want to, and they're often, like, let's say they're proper legacy organizations. So they've been doing this the same way for 50 years, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But the massive unlock comes with the concept of creating a cross-functional team. So the idea there is, hey, what are we trying to do? What's the outcome we're trying to get from the client, right?
Yep.
And you go, well, we've got to, I'm going to pick a really stupid, simple example. We've got to launch a new website, right? And you go, okay, what does it take to do that? Well, I need some web developers. I need a marketing guy. I've got to have a copywriter. I need a legal person. Okay, get all those people together around a table, right? And literally physically put them in a team, give them money, $2 million, right? And say, this team of cross-functional people have everything they need end to end to launch the website. Now, that's so logical, but dude, no businesses do that. No businesses. I worked for a telco, 5,000 people, right? I was the CMO in charge of a team of 120 people.
Yep.
And basically to do that, to launch that website would take us 9 months. The work would move around the building. Yep. It would be idle for 70% of the time. Yes, 70.
Yeah.
So only 30% of those 9 months was anyone actually doing anything.
Yeah.
For the other 70%, it's just sat in an inbox, in a digital inbox somewhere. So
yeah,
you create these cross-functional teams, right? When you have a team, maximum 10 people, you think very differently about the skills of the people in the team, right? And there's a concept that I use a lot, right? And it's this concept of a comb-shaped person. So in the past, we've talked about I-shaped people, specialists, right?
Yeah.
Then we talked about T-shaped people. Like, I'm a specialist, I know some other stuff, right?
Yeah.
When you get to comb-shaped, you said, right, I am a specialist in one thing,
right?
But there is a lot of stuff I know. So you go, right, if you're trying to launch a website, the person who is a marketer, okay, with knowledge of product management, right, and actually has taken the time to upskill in UX and journey design, right, and it's like that person is like gold.
Yeah.
Like seriously. So like when you were speaking like that, I'm like, right, how, like, think about that for a second. Think about how your people have skills and capabilities and interests way outside of their I pillar.
Absolutely.
How do you use that? Right? Because this is the essence of unlocking the potential of your people. And then I go, right? We know that people coming into the workforce, especially the Gen Zs, but it's like, develop them.
Yeah.
Like if you don't, they leave. Right? This is true. Yeah. So you go, right. Suddenly, if I'm an organization, I'm like, we can teach these guys stuff, right? It's like they demand it, right? Yeah. Oh, and by the way, when we have multi-skilled people that are interested in a variety of things, that makes us better. So you start to think like of these teams where it's like, we can create a team of people around this business problem for the client with diversity of experience, diversity of perspective. Yeah. And it just becomes this humming group of people that know stuff. Not this idea of like, well, my whole career, I've made a career of being of knowing how to do LinkedIn marketing on Wednesday morning. You go, okay, dude, like, I'm not sure I want that anymore. I got to be honest with you.
I know. I get it. I love the comb metaphor. I think that's super easy to get. I love the idea of just tasking organizations with how do you get as much of that comb as possible? How do you sort of activate the different tines of the comb where you can? And I like the idea of the team structure. Like if you truly give it to the team, which is what I'm hearing you saying, it's not like it's a team, but really there's these 20 other people who are going to be diving in and mucking it up. Then there you put people into kind of problem solving mode where they go, okay, here's a challenge we need. Who can do this? Yeah. And you start to like you said, tease out some of that stuff. And you either have to do it or you can't do it, and there's something really beautiful about that.
Okay. So right. Brilliant point. So I meet executives, and when you get to the bottom of what's frustrating them, they're like, no, people won't take accountability.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's somebody saying, we're not getting enough shit done. There's a number of things going on there, but this accountability thing, it's like, right, here's the good news. Okay.
Yeah.
Your people want accountability. Okay. The thing is, you're not giving it to them.
Yeah.
Like you can't say, oh, I wish people would be more accountable. It's like, well, okay, they're not going to accept accountability if you're unclear about what the outcome needs to be, if they don't have the skills to do it, if they haven't got access to the resources, if they don't have the decision-making rights, they're not going to be accountable.
Exactly.
So like what you just touched on is such an important point, right? Like our teams, our people, let's just imagine you hire quality people, which most people do, right?
Yeah.
It's like, I'm telling you, they want to be accountable. They want it. Give it to them. Yeah. Right? Create the conditions by which they can, as a team of 4, 5, 10, they can go, this is ours. This is our problem. Yeah. We've got incredible knowledge. Between us, we've got the skills. Like, okay, you do that, shit changes, man. I'm telling you. Like,
it does.
Everything changes.
Here's the conundrum or the challenge for leaders, right? Because you said they say they want accountability, but in the worst cases, accountability is weaponized, right? It is an opportunity to blame. And so I know people who, when they hear the word accountability, they bristle a little bit at first. I've coached people like this. And then you get underneath it and it's like, well, no, I want the autonomy and the ability to do what I can do. And I want to be able to sort of own that piece of it or whatever. But they've just been beaten up and then sometimes that word accountability gets used. So it's like, you got to be able to reframe that for people. And that's a big cultural shift too, of saying accountability is freedom. Accountability is your ticket to career growth, help people see all the upsides and talk about the responsibility that comes with that, like a sane person and not like some person who goes, see, I gave you accountability. You kind of messed up that one little thing. I'm never giving you accountability again. So I think there's some cultural shifts that need to happen. Obviously, with a lot of this stuff, it's the companies need to be willing to go and wade into this water a little bit and be comfortable with the fact that occasionally things aren't going to work exactly as you hope, and build culture around that. Is that part of what you do too? So
all the answers, man. You might as well just come ride with me because okay. Accountability only works with high quality leadership. Okay? Yeah. And high quality leadership means those things I just mentioned have to be true, right? So clarity can only come from leaders, right? And as a team, like, you want me to be accountable, be very clear about what you want me to do, right? And not what you want me to do, but the outcomes we're seeking. Leadership. Okay. Also, leaders must have everyone's back. If it turns to shit, you need very high quality leaders who can say without question, TJ, I've got you.
Yeah.
Like, this is on me. Okay.
Yeah.
And it needs to be safe to fail.
Yeah.
Now, for larger organizations, that is very doable, right? Like, don't tell me you are $1 billion organization and you can't afford to mess some shit up. Like, you mess shit up the whole time. So just get over it, right? In fact, make messing shit up part of your thing. Yeah. Because there's tremendous growth in messing shit up. For smaller companies, it's harder because it feels like risk. There's more at stake, right? Yeah. We can't mess up the new website launch.
Yeah.
So it makes it harder, but the rules still apply, right? You have to, if you're going to make people accountable, you have to be prepared for them to miss. And for those people to see that as a learning experience that grew them as a human. You do that, your people stay. So don't, because that's the other thing, right? That we hear all the time. So I can't keep people. Oh my God. Everyone's leaving. It's like, okay, just think about what we just talked about for the last 45 minutes, right?
Yeah.
You want people to not leave? Think about this stuff, because this is what makes them stay. They go, oh, it was really challenging. And, we half delivered it.
Yeah.
But it was really great. And I love working with those people. And I'm really proud of what we did.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Like, dude, you're off to the races. You're off to the races.
Yeah. It's remarkable how sort of simple that sounds, but there's obviously a lot of hard work to get to that place. But I think it's not complicated, but it does take it takes commitment. And, I think in the case of those smaller places, it may take really being collaborative with your clients to help them understand this is the way we work. We are going to fumble the ball occasionally, but know that we're always committed, and we're always committed to fixing whatever doesn't work properly. And that will lead to this greater result.
But my experience, TJ, you're absolutely right. My experience is that the benefits far outweigh the negatives.
I agree.
Right? And as a client, what you will experience is higher quality work, at a faster speed. Got to be careful with speed, because
I get it.
We could talk for an hour about speed, but
I get it. Yeah,
you will get shit done quicker, and it will be better, right? And the conversations you are having, will be higher quality. So in my experience, the positives far outweigh the negatives, but it requires very not expert leadership, but enlightened leadership.
Yeah.
Okay. From company executives, partners, stakeholders. It just requires people to know what's going on, right? This is not a covert op. This is culturally, we're about to do things differently. And we're going to do that because as a business, we want to put ourselves in a position, to thrive as everything around us changes. And the only way to do that is it can't be 7 of us at the top on a Wednesday in a management room going, oh, things are really hard. It's like you got to get the 350 people outside, spin them up.
Yeah. I feel like you were just engaged. I was just thrown back to 27 different meetings I was in. Ooh, this is really hard. And I love the idea that things are changing fast. People may think that AI is going to save them. It's obviously not going to save them. But if we do all this, we maximize the effects that AI can have on businesses, because now people are prepared to do it. And I think that's where AI can get exciting. If you start to think about how you can take ownership of what you do with it, instead of just going, oh, this is hard.
Yeah, it's just we've had this conversation, I think, on before, TJ, but it's just technology. Yeah, there's been technology before. There'll be technology again. This is a quite disruptive one.
It is,
but it's like how it's never just tech, right?
Yeah,
it's the people around it.
Absolutely.
So you've got to get them right, and then I think however this plays out. And by the way, in brackets, no one knows how this is going to play out.
Absolutely.
You'll be able to deal with it, right? Because you'll have everyone in the company part of solving it. Not the 6 people on Wednesday in the boardroom.
Yeah.
Right. Because they ain't going to, they've got a very important role to do. And I've been in that boardroom, by the way, as CMO, I've sat there.
Yeah.
But it's not about them.
Yeah.
It's about the opportunity sits outside of that room.
I agree. I know we want to start wrapping things up here. I think you've already answered this, but if you have anything else to add, I always ask people, if you could wave a magic wand, what would a sort of fully desuckified work world look like? Anything beyond what we've talked about that we didn't get to?
You know what? The conversation we had a minute ago just sparked an idea. Do you remember? I think you're old enough. You know what top trumps are? I think it's still around. You know what top trumps are?
I'm not sure.
Okay, so they're they're a playing card, and basically you had top trumps of all different.
Got it.
It might be called something different here, but
maybe, yeah.
And basically you deal them out, and then they're supercars, right? And you go, and you pick your card, and you don't know what you've got.
Yeah, like a wild card kind of a thing.
I've got 1,433 horsepower, and you go, I've only got 900 horsepower. Okay, I win your card, right? So imagine top trump. Imagine if I could wave a magic wand and everyone in your organization had their top trump card digitally connected to them. I'm Alice, right? This is what I do.
Yeah.
And you know this much of it. Look at the whole sheet.
Yeah.
Okay?
I love
that would be metaphorically, I like that idea, because I don't know TJ, right? I know a bit about TJ.
And how can we, TJ, right? I mean, you talk about speed. We're moving so fast. It's not always easy to know. We're thrust together in a team, and that's like some quick way of getting what people are capable of. I love that. Yeah. Last thing I always ask, and I think you're prepared for this, is I use some sound effects on my show in the intro and the outro, and I always ask my guests if they're willing to contribute one to add to the mix. So you got a sound effect for us?
Okay, I got to get ready for this. Okay, this is my sound effect. It sounds like this.
Okay.
That's the cold wind of change. She's blowing.
It is blowing. And I know some people are afraid of it. I get afraid of it. I'll be honest. Sometimes I'm afraid of it, but I try to be more excited than afraid. And I think.
But how do you face challenge, right? Like as a human being, right? You face challenge together.
Yeah.
And this is kind of the whole point, right? And it's like I've seen over the last kind of eight years of my professional career, I've been working with businesses facing really significant challenges. And the way you solve that is to energize everyone, okay, to play their part.
Yeah.
Yeah, because back to the 6 guys in the boardroom, it's like they'll do their best. They can't solve this. Yeah. They can't solve it, man. No. So it's like, how do you, like, rather than thinking and worrying about how do you, TJ, solve this, think about how you get people around you to understand the problem and to use their capabilities, skills, energy, experience to solve it with you. Yeah. Okay, that's the deal.
I love that. How do people find you so they can hear more about all this awesome stuff that you're talking about here, Mark?
Yeah, so Mark Redgrave on LinkedIn. I think there's a few of us, but hopefully I'm the only one in Orange County. I've got a website which is shift-transform.com. Okay. I'm not active enough on blogging and other things, but yeah, if you want to reach out, I kind of like this stuff. So yeah, my career's had a new lease of life as I've sort of got my arms around this. So it's great.
Yeah. I think it's quite obvious that you're into it, Mark. I appreciate you coming on. I'll point people towards your LinkedIn and your site as well in the show notes so that people can track you down and have more conversations like this.
Brilliant. I appreciate you having me on though, man. It's been really, really entertaining.
Yeah. Awesome, Mark. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Thanks everyone for tuning in to the DesuckifyWork Podcast. And thanks to Mark for being willing to ruffle a few feathers in the pursuit of a better agency world for everyone. You can follow Mark on LinkedIn and check out his site at shift-transform.com, where he does a brilliant job of identifying the core challenges agencies face and providing solutions that set us up to thrive for the long haul. I think you should haul your butt over to my site and my Substack newsletter. They're both packed with desuckifying goodness for creatives, agencies, and folks who think enjoying the way we spend nearly half our waking hours is a reasonable expectation. Want to start that enjoying now? Let's set up a free half-hour Desuckified discovery session. Bye, everyone.